𝗪𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀
One of the most well-known, obviously, being this Egyptian society that we, almost everyone shares an obsession with. Could you speculate on, as best you could, on what the hell the pyramids were actually for? Because they definitely weren't just tombs. It wasn't just a place to put a pharaoh, as I know that's the traditional discussion. And it's like, once you go there too, because I've been, and it's like, no, that's not what this, I mean, I don't know what it is, but that's not it.
That's not it. Yeah. When you look at the Great Pyramid, for example, it definitely is not a tomb. I mean, you can clearly see there's no hieroglyphs in there. When you begin to look at what's been discovered in some of the hidden shafts, and I've been all in and throughout that pyramid into so many places that people in this world will never even get a chance to see. I just took 140 people there in October on a private tour, and I stayed inside the Great Pyramid for over 6 hours. Even went down the subterranean shaft, which nobody gets a chance to go down. And there's markings in some of these little tiny tunnels and shafts that are markings like electrical markings, positive, negative, grounding. There's also an aspect of the Great Pyramid, they call it the Queen's Chamber, which looks like an electrolysis unit that would extract hydrogen from the water and shoot it through the shafts. There's so much technology built into this thing, I come to understand that it now is a multifunctional stone computer and a power generator. It does both. And even inside the King's Chamber, where there seems to be this crystal granite box, that crystal granite box was added to that room at a much later date. You can tell by the way it's constructed and the way it's sitting there. And that box is the same dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant, which means that's what used to sit inside of it. More than likely, because as the Nile meandered away from the pyramid, you had a situation where the water that was running underneath the crystal granite was not creating any more physiostatic electricity. So the pyramid, for the most part, was broken. The machine was broken. But that particular device added a power boost to what it was generating and was sending that through the apex of the pyramid. And the evidence of this is that in that room, there's evidence of a huge explosion where a part of that granite box that they're trying to say was a sarcophagus is missing. A huge corner piece is missing, and you could look across the room 20 feet away where it impacted solid granite and left the same exact indentation in the solid granite that it impacted across the room. So there was an explosion in that room at some point. A massive energetic explosion. So when you walk into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, you're standing inside of an actual power generation unit. You're standing inside of something that used to be used to create energy. So you're standing inside of a machine, which is wild. It's a gigantic machine. It also has so many things added to it and built into the structure. The encoded knowledge in the structure itself is mind-blowing. From just multiplying the stones by the base, you can get the days in a year, the days in a tropical year, a sidereal year. You can get the distance from the Earth to the moon based on the calculations of the stones in the pyramid, the distance from the Earth to the sun, the circumference of the sun. You can even get the speed of the Earth on its axis, and you can even get the speed of the Earth around the sun. You can get the speed of the sun around the Milky Way supermassive black hole, and even the speed of the Milky Way around its local cluster. So we're talking about a time capsule of astrophysical knowledge combined with the fact that it also generated electricity, and I think it also sent out communications on the hydrogen frequency.
And one of the greatest questions has got to be how. Also, how did they know? We don't have any evidence of telescopes. We don't have any evidence of space travel, let's say, in the way that we know space travel, by putting some gas and some fuel and then just shooting our way out there. How would they know?
Well, we have some things that give us a clue as to what their technological prowess was. First thing is, we know the Dogon tribe, they were the original inhabitants of Egypt, the Dogons, before they got taken over and moved out to Mali, Africa, where they've been for thousands of years. But they know about a trinary star system named Sirius. They knew about that long before astrophysicists in the world knew it existed. They knew about the orbital period of those 3 stars that orbit each other in that star system, and one of those stars can't be seen with the naked eye. And they claim that this knowledge was brought to them by the Nommo, beings that used to live on a planet orbiting that star before it ran out of fuel and turned into a white dwarf. They came to Earth to create a breakaway civilization. They brought that knowledge with them. Then we have the indigenous peoples of the Americas, the Hopi, the Lakota, They have the same story. The Star Brothers brought them the knowledge of the stars. The Mayans, they were brought by the sky gods. They brought the knowledge, right? So no matter where you go on this planet, all of a sudden we keep hearing the same story. The Aboriginals that I did a walkabout in the Australian outback. They told me that their verbal handed down history for thousands of years was that we were seeded on this planet by Pleiadians. Same thing with the Hopi tribe. I mean, I can go on and on and on. So we have evidence of some type of contact evidence through histories that have been handed down and even written in text that occurred at some point. The book of Enoch, which is not in the Bible, even though Enoch was highly revered because he's mentioned as being highly revered in the Bible, but his book was left out. Why was his book left out of the Bible? Well, his book talks about beings coming from space to Earth, engaging mankind, teaching us how to make weapons, perfume, makeup, how to make beer and hang out and have fun and all these crazy things. And then they take Enoch in a ship and take him to space. And they bring him back. In the Bible, they claim he never came back. He went to heaven without even having died. No, it was an appointed departure date where he left all of the information to his sons on how to run the estate. And then he came back in the future, years later, but he was brought back to Earth again. And so they decided, well, we better not put this alien abduction inside the Bible. So we'll leave this book out. The only Bible that has a copy of the book of Enoch in it is the Ethiopian Bible. That's one of the oldest Bibles that exist. So we know we have these encounters. So they must have had technology. The book of Ezekiel in the Bible, the wheels within wheels, another UFO sighting in the biblical text. And then we have the Black Knight satellite, which I did a whole documentary on. This object is still above our head right now, orbiting our planet in a polar orbit. It was witnessed by the Russians in the 1960s when they were sending up Sputnik. It changed course to follow Sputnik. Tesla talked about this object. In the 1950s, it made the two different newspapers. Ham radio operators were picking up a signal from this object. 1960, it makes Time magazine. It's up there for a fact because all eyes are on the sky because we're trying to beat Russia to get satellites in space, and we're all launching experiments. We discover a polar orbiting satellite and giving off a special type of a frequency or signal, which was decoded by an astrophysicist. This astrophysicist decoded it and said, this thing is pointing to the 𝗪𝗂𝗋𝗄𝗯 constellation. What does that mean? When you begin to research the 𝗪𝗂𝗋 constellation, the first thing I do when I research constellations or stars or planets or moons, I go look at the tablets and find out who owned them. Well, who does the Sumerian tablets say owns 𝗪𝗂𝗋? Enlil from the Sumerian tablets, also known as Yahweh in the Bible. He owns the constellation. So could it be that object that's still up there looking at us, maybe monitoring our planet for 13,000 years, they estimate it's been up there, and sending a signal back to epsilon as to a reporting as to what's going on with this breakaway civilization that became an abandoned seed colony, Earth. So there's a lot going on. It's just so much going on, but I believe that they had the technology. How would you know how to build the Great Pyramid where it's located? You have to have a satellite. The Great Pyramid is located at the center of Earth's landmass, not the center of the Earth, but the center of Earth's landmass. You would need a polar orbiting satellite that can scan the land as the Earth rotates on its axis and take swaths of data, stitch it together, and make the calculation on landmass. It's also the average height of all the peaks on Earth. You need to count the peaks, which means you have to have a polar orbiting satellite. And as Earth spins on its axis, you would count all the peaks, the heights and the depths, and then you would multiply that and divide it to come up with the total number of the average height. And then you would say, this is the height of the pyramid. So all these things point to a certain level of advanced technology that will be required in order to construct them. So through circumstantial evidence, we have a case.